Hello, my name is Camila, and I did this research with two other colleagues, Bruna Ciarza and Pauline Orsi, under the supervision of Professor Fernanda Marçal. The obstetric scenario in Brazil is very worrying. Although the data from the population survey Nascer no Brasil provided a detailed overview of the epidemiology of labor and birth in Brazil, there are still gaps related to obstetric violence, for example. Just because there is no consensus on terminology, there are also no standardized instruments to identify and measure this problem. Therefore, the objectives of the research are: analyze the use of the term obstetric violence in qualitative studies on the Brazilian context of childbirth care, characterize the population assessed by the included studies, identify and describe how the studied population characterized obstetric violence. For that, this is a literature review conducted in national and international databases, with the research question being how the term obstetric violence is described by women and healthcare professionals in the Brazilian context. And here we can see the details of the search strategy and inclusion criteria. Also, the Prisma diagram and details of data extraction and data presentation. And for the partial results, we can see that the publications are concentrated in the years of 2020 and 2021, which reflects the contemporaneity of the obstetric violence theme and the emerging need for the subject to be discussed. The most studied population was women, representing 52% of the total of extracted articles. Also, the objective of the extracted studies focused on the knowledge or perception on the subject of obstetric violence. Most studies use content analysis technique to analyze the participants' speeches. The most used technique was Bardeen's content analysis. None of the collection instruments is a validated tool, and the term obstetric violence appeared in all the studies. However, the theoretical frameworks used to support the concept were diverse. About the characterization of obstetric violence by the studies, we can see that lack of knowledge on the topic was the most common finding. Psychological abuse and denial of rights were the main forms of violence identified as obstetric violence. Unnecessary intervention is frequently identified as obstetric violence. Although the studies used the term obstetric violence, there was no consensus on the theoretical framework to describe it. The lack of legal framework to support the use of this term is a weakness. Few articles referenced government entities or international agents. Women's perception on obstetric violence is closely related to the way they are treated during childbirth, so that the theme of psychological and institutional violence often appears in the analysis of the extracted articles, through reports of verbal intimidation and non-compliance of the companion's law. Health professionals, on the other hand, have difficulty identifying themselves as perpetrator of unnecessary interventions. In addition, these practices are considered natural in childbirth assistance. Furthermore, the lack of knowledge on the part of women about the issue of obstetric violence makes them susceptible to situation of mistreatment, given that these women rely on the trust that the image of health professional conveys. And this is the bibliography that I used. Thank you.